So when people ask about my Tesla Model 3, one of their biggest concerns is the battery pack. They asked if it's degraded, how many miles I've lost, how it's holding up, and of course that's a really important part of the car. It's by far the most expensive part of the car, and it's the biggest change when coming from a gas vehicle. So today I'm going to share my experience and talk about my battery after 50,000 miles on my dual motor long-range Tesla Model 3. So my Model 3 was built in October of 2018. I took delivery at the beginning of 2019. It was a test drive vehicle that had 3,000 miles on it. And at that time, when I would do a full 100% charge, which of course I don't do very often, it would go up to about 308 miles of range out of the 310 miles rated. So just to update you, after 2.5 years and about 50,000 miles, I've lost about 15 miles of range, but stick around because I don't think that's actually true. I think there's a lot more to this, and the reading is pretty confusing, and I'm not sure why Tesla has it set up the way they do. So these days when I hop in my car, it's charged up. I charge it every night up to 80 or 90%. I just have the percentage up there on the battery, just like I do with my phone. I don't have the miles, because depending on how you drive, the weather, and a bunch of factors, even if it says 250 miles, 290 miles, you're not usually going to get that. You could get slightly more than that, but usually you'll get less. So for me, I found percentage to be a more comforting, easy to look at indicator as I use my car. Now, I've done past videos about battery calibration. When I first started to notice my miles going down, I did used to keep the display on miles. I tried a calibration. There's all kinds of rumors out there. Even Tesla will tell you, depending on who you talk to, different ways you can calibrate your battery. And as far as I found, reading online, my own attempts at calibrating, there really is nothing that works for everybody. Some people will get results doing certain things. I tried two of the most common myths, which is to discharge your battery below 20% or 10%. I actually went below 10% both times, and to charge all the way 100% full until the computer says charging complete. You will sit at 100% for a while the batteries balance and do other things, so you have to wait for that message that says charging complete. And some people said you even have to go as far as doing that at a supercharger. You can't do it at home. So I did it twice in a row, brought my battery down below 10%. At home, I charged to 100%. I then straight from there went down again below 10%, took it to a supercharger, charged up to 100%, waited for the message. And in that testing that I didn't find any difference with my battery, the miles, any type of calibration. Nothing happened. It just displayed pretty much the same thing. Thank you to today's sponsor, Webull. If you want to buy Tesla stock, it's kind of getting killed right now, maybe a good time to buy Dogecoin or other cryptocurrencies, you can use my referral link to sign up with Webull. If you deposit $100, you'll get 2 free stocks, and I'll get 1. And you don't actually even have to spend the $100. You can just withdraw it after you get your free stocks if you want. But check out my referral link in the description and in the comments section if you want to try Webull for free. Now, one thing I noticed while doing those tests is on the lower end of my percentages, it was more accurate in terms of the miles. So when I'm at 10%, the car says 30 or 31 miles, which is of course 10% of my vehicle's rated 310 miles. When I'm at the higher end of the pack, 90%, 89%, 80%, they say much less than what those figures should be. So I very recently tested this out. I had a lot of driving to do, and this was just in the past week or so. I brought my battery down pretty low, and you can see here at the 10% rating, it's saying I have 30 miles of range, which according to that, I've only lost about 1 mile. Which is great news. That's really good. But if you look at this clip where I'm at 89% and I'm switching back and forth, and I think I have another clip, it says I believe 265 miles, I don't remember exactly, but it's much less than the 276 miles that it should be at 89%. So what the heck is going on here, Tesla? It's a really weird thing they have going on. Of course, somebody programmed this on the car. This is how it should be displayed. You can never know the exact amount of energy in a battery. It's all a bunch of guessing and calculations. Now, it's very accurate. You have a battery management system which takes care of that, but you can never know the exact amount of energy in a battery. It's just a lot of guessing based off of voltages and different things that I don't fully understand, but I do know that that guess is just that, a guess as to how much energy is in there, and that's put onto the display. Now, other companies do not display their miles this way. There's different ways that different companies do it. Some have it so that it changes based on your driving style. So say you drive really aggressively, of course your car is not going to go as far, just like in a gas car. If you drive really aggressively, really fast, lots of hard braking, you won't make it as far on the same amount of fuel. Same thing for an electric car, and vehicles like the Chevy Bolt have a guessometer, and they will actually change the displayed range based on your driving history. I don't know if it's super recent driving history or all of your driving history. I'm not sure exactly how it works. But if it's cold out, if you're driving really fast, things like that, the displayed range will be less. If you drive really slowly, really conservatively, do a lot of regenerative braking, if the weather's really warm, the displayed miles will be more. They can be far more than you would expect, or they can be far less with the aggressive driving. In a Tesla, the displayed range on the main screen, anyway, we can talk about the other sections in a minute, the displayed range on the main screen has nothing to do with your driving habits, your environment, the weather. Tesla says this directly on their website. It's just the amount of energy that's calculated in the pack times the EPA rating of your full 100% charge. So if the battery is charged up to 90%, that should be about 65 kilowatt hours that the battery is seeing. If it thinks that there's less than 65 kilowatt hours in there, it will do that calculation and determine, okay, there's supposed to be 65 kilowatt hours at 90%, but there's a little less than that, so we don't have our normal amount of miles, we have a few less, and it will be displayed in that way. Now, if you change to percent, most of that goofiness goes out the window. You charge to 90%, you're at 90%. It doesn't matter if your battery degraded a little bit, because that's gone. It's not part of your total percent of your battery. So if you tell the car to charge to 85 or 90%, it's just gonna be at that percentage. Now, I have a little weirdness with my car, and I don't know if other people experience this as well. I set it to charge to 90% most of the time, and usually it will stop at 90%, but then the next day I'll wake up and it's at 89%, even though it's been plugged in the whole night and it's sleeping, nothing's running, I don't have Sentry mode or anything like that. This also happens sometimes at 100%. If I charge it up to 100%, again, very rare, I've done that maybe 10 times in the time I've owned the car, it won't actually go to 100%. It'll charge to 98 or 99 and then say it's done. And I don't know why it's done that in the past, but that's just kind of goofy. Of course, overall, like in practical use, it doesn't matter, but it's just something I've noticed. You'll see a lot of owners are pretty confused by this as well, and they're not that happy with their battery's performance. Now, you do have some owners, I asked people on Twitter what they thought of their battery and how it was holding up, and you do have some people that are very happy, that say they still have their full range or almost full range, or they'll say, oh, I've lost 5% of my battery in this amount of time, and that's totally acceptable. And then you have other people that haven't had their car very long, and they're seeing bigger percentage drops. They're seeing, at least what's displayed on the screen, that they're losing a lot of these miles. And I kind of think it might not actually be true. So that's why I'm kind of wondering, like, what is going on with this display, Tesla? Why is it shown to us in this way? It's not very intuitive. It's pretty confusing, especially when the numbers change often. Sometimes you'll charge to the same percentage every day if you have the miles displayed, and you'll see different numbers every day. Now, the good news in all of this, from my experience in my 2.5 years of ownership, it hasn't mattered at all. This hasn't affected me in one way, one bit at all. And that's the main reason I changed to percent display. And I would honestly encourage people to do that as well if you are frustrated by this at all, or you think it's weird, or your mileage numbers don't look good. I used to get a little kind of annoyed or even stressed when I would see, hey, I charged to 90% and it should be, 276 or 278 miles, and it's 255 or 265 or whatever it is. But in reality, those numbers haven't changed anything. I can still drive to work and home every day, no problem, and charge up overnight. I can go 2, sometimes even 3 days driving all the way to work and all the way home and not have to charge, or just charge a tiny bit. I have a habit lately, since I have solar, I want to charge my car when the sun's out. So as I approach the end of the week, I charge less and less. And usually Friday nights, I'm getting home from work with anywhere from 15 to 22% in that range. And then I just wait until the next day when the sun's up and I start charging my car at that time. So in doing that, another interesting thing I noticed, I had 2 days back to back where I drove to work and did not charge the car in between those 2 days. The 2 days were very similar. The weather on the second day was a tiny bit warmer, but my driving speed and style was the same both days. And I noticed the first day, going from 80%, I used almost 40% of my battery for that trip, about 70 miles. On the second day, the exact same trip, doing the same speeds, of course not everything was exactly the same, but very similar, I used closer to 30% on the second day. What? Now, of course, it could have been environmental factors for that big change, but a 10% difference on the same route, back to back, it seems like the battery was using less energy on that second day. Could it have something to do with the readings near the top end of the battery being more aggressive, thinking more energy is being used or more is being sucked up? And as you get lower into the battery pack, the readings are more conservative. You're not actually using as much as the system thinks. I don't know. I don't really have much of a guess here. I'm not much of a battery engineer. I'm not much of a software engineer. I don't code anything. So it's just very strange and confusing. And to be honest, I wish Tesla would change this up in some way. Just make it the EPA rated range and don't change it. And then it just isn't all that accurate like it is today, but it's not changing all the time and confusing people. Maybe do the guessometer method, where it does change based on your driving style, because again, it's not doing that now. Where you can see that is in the menus. If you go into the energy graph, the car will tell you, you can change the settings based on the past 5, 20, or 30 miles. I think those are the numbers. It will tell you, this is how much energy you've used, and if you continue driving in this style, you can drive another X amount of miles on your battery. Let's say you're going down a huge hill, you're regenning the whole way, it'll say you can go 999 miles, because if you do that for 999 miles, your battery will be infinite. If you're going up a huge hill using a ton of energy, if you're at even 80%, it'll say, oh, you're only gonna make it 50 miles, you're using too much energy. So that could be incorporated into the main screen. Another thing I've noticed is in the Tesla app, you can move the cursor around and it will predict for you the percentage at each point in the battery, or if you're set to miles, it will show you how many miles the app predicts at each battery level. And I found this to be even goofier than the in-car display. You can just kind of wiggle this line around, and sometimes it'll show you the full charge is 310 miles. You'll go back and forth, and when you get back to the top again, it'll show you the full charge is 300 miles, and it can change really rapidly in the matter of a few seconds. This is totally useless, and I'm not sure why it's displaying all these random numbers for no reason. The same thing actually even happens with percent, which I don't notice in the car, but in the app, especially when the battery is really low, I can move it to the 50% mark, and it'll say it's actually only going to be 48% or 45%, but then when it charges up, it does hit 50%. And same thing when the battery's really low, if I move it to the 90% mark, it might say that's only 85% or 80%. And it's just not true. That's not what happens when you actually charge the car. So something weird is going on with the calculations or the way these things are displayed. And it'd be really nice to get this cleared up just to avoid confusion for people and make this more clear. But overall, as I said earlier, this has not affected my day-to-day performance of the car at all. I'm actually really happy with the battery. I think it's held up fine over these 50,000 miles in 2.5 years. I don't see me having any problems with it. There is a warranty. It goes up to 120,000 miles or 8 years, I believe. And if the battery loses 30% capacity, Tesla will replace it for free. I don't see that happening. And let's say I got to 125,000 miles and I lost 25% capacity, which looking at other high mileage cars looks like that's not going to be the case at all. Most people lose a little bit of their range, up to 5 to 7% in the first year or so, and then it kind of tapers off and they stop, the battery stops degrading so much. But let's say I lost 25% when I hit 125,000 miles, so I'm out of warranty. I would not get a free battery replacement. That's still over 230 miles of range, which would make an incredibly usable car still at that point, especially if you're not doing road trips and things like that. I have heard a couple warranty claims of people's batteries on Twitter, but they were always low mileage and the degradation happened incredibly fast. I'm not aware personally of any high mileage Model 3s that have had their batteries replaced due to warranty. If you do know of any, share them in the comments down below. I'd be interested to read or hear about those. So if you're a prospective Tesla owner and you're curious how the battery will treat you, in my experience, it's been great. No complaints, just those numbers are weird and I wish Tesla would change that. Maybe in the version 11 software update we're getting soon, those things will be different and calculated differently and displayed differently. I think that would be great. But my recommendation, just change it to percent and who cares? The miles are not that accurate anyway, especially if you drive really conservatively or really aggressively. The estimates are either gonna be off in the direction of you won't actually have that much range, or you'll have way more than it says. So yeah, change to percent and I wouldn't worry too much about it. Overall, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about the battery that I did not answer, please leave those down below and I will try to answer those for you. And you will see me in the next video.
So Autopilot and I are happily driving along